Ben Micah's first-hand account of the twists and turns that resulted in the election of Sir Mekere as Prime Minister in July 1999. But first, let's listen to how Sir Mekere describes the scourge of corruption.
I think it would be fair for me to describe corruption as both systemic and systematic. Systemic because it has invaded the whole processes of policy making and decision making. It has drowned the whole system, so it's systemic. It's systematic because it's organized.
How Sir Mekere became Prime Minister in July 1999 by Ben Micah. Parts 1-2 put together in one article. This is a two-part publication by Post Courier on December 30th and 31st, 2020, of Ben Micah's first-hand account of the horse-trading turns and twists that led to the eventual election of late Sir Mekere as Prime Minister in 1999. What is described in vivid detail by Micah shows utter chaos and a dog-eat-dog process for whoever, by luck, not by design, becomes Prime Minister. Sir Mekere rise to the position of Prime Minister had been most unlikely from the start. Firstly, he had been elected to Parliament as an independent for the seat of Moresby North West, and thus was considered a one-man band. Secondly, the proposal by Pius Wing-Ti for him to take over the leadership of the People's Democratic Movement, PDM party, was rejected by more seasoned MPs who felt betrayed by Wing-Ti in favor of a first-termer. The opposition camp had three nominees for the position of Prime Minister: National Alliance, NA party led by Sir Michael Somare, and the People's National Congress Party, led by Bill Skate, were in contention for the Prime Ministership. Pius Wing-Ti, leader of PDM, was proposing Sir Mekere, who had won Port Moresby North West as an independent candidate. Roy Yaki, who was unhappy with Wing-Ti's proposal, broke ranks and took several PDM members to join Bill Skate's camp at Tufi, Northern Province. The People's Progress Party, PPP, and Pangu Party combined could not muster the magic 55 required to elect the PM. A delegation led by Andrew Baing and Kilroy Guinea was sent by People's Progress Party, PPP, strongman Sir Julius Chan, and Chris Haveta to negotiate with NA for a possible coalition to back Sir Michael Somare for the PM's position. The two gentlemen were shown the door by over-enthusiastic, newly elected MPs who told them NA did not want to form government with corrupt parties. I recall attending a meeting at Wing-Ti's Barocco residence to sort out the prime ministership issue between Sir Mekere and Bill Skate. Andrew Baing, new leader for PPP, made it known that Sir Mekere was PPP's choice for prime minister. That is when Bill Skate stood up and forcefully took control of the meeting and emphasized the issue of seniority and that he had secured enough numbers to win the PM's position. He moved out, and half of PDM members followed. Sir Mek's first attempt had floundered. PPP, Pangu, and PDM rallied behind Bill Skate, and he became the fifth prime minister. He appointed Chris Haveta as deputy PM. Skate's unorthodox style of running the office of PM became controversial from day one. Constant drinking parties beyond the confines of protocol resulted one day in the infamous Mujosefa tapes. The tapes leaked by SBS in Australia purportedly caught Bill Skate boasting to Mujosefa and other expatriate businessmen that he was the godfather of the Port Moresby underworld. Haveta was accused of leaking the tapes and was publicly sacked and humiliated at the Old Jackson's airport terminal by PM Skate. Michael Nally was appointed DPM and then sacked again. The appointment of the Iranian ex-World Bank official as a super consultant and the worsening economic and financial situation, including the free fall of the Kina, led Skate in desperation to do a deal with Taiwan in exchange for diplomatic recognition by PNG. The decision angered China, upset Australia, and sent diplomatic shockwaves around the Asia-Pacific region. In November 1998, the Skate government adjourned Parliament to July 1999, hoping to buy time and avoid a potential vote of no confidence in March. By June, the Skate cabinet revolted, with 6 ministers resigning. The rebels teamed up with PDM and made Sir Mekere parliamentary leader. A deal was struck with Speaker John Pundari's advanced PNG party for the formation of an alternate government. Sir Mekere would be PM and John Pundari DPM. The group set up camp with more than 60 MPs at Peter Barter's Madang resort. Bill Skate and his group set up camp in Rabol. The horse trading began. While the Madang group was on a boating expedition on the Melanesia Discover, an MP from Pundari's advanced PNG party complained of severe food poisoning, and the captain took the ship into Jai Saben, outside Madang. Upon berthing, Sir Mekere and the PDM members were shocked and surprised to see security vehicles and buses already parked at the Catholic Church wharf. Security personnel from Yama Security Services boarded the ship and escorted Pundari's advanced PNG party members into 2 buses, and to the shock and disbelief of PDM MPs, drove away into Madang. APP set up camp at Smuggler's Inn, and PDM returned to Port Moresby with depleted numbers and unsure of the next phase of events as the Parliament sitting loomed closer. Meanwhile, negotiations between PNC and APP had reached agreement that Pundari be proposed as Prime Minister, so the Rabaul camp flew into Madang, and the numbers were consolidated at the Smuggler's Inn. The absolute majority had tilted in favor of a Skate Pundari government. On the 7th of July, Bill Skate resigned as Prime Minister and announced John Pundari as the nominee for Prime Minister. 3 days before the Parliament sitting, the group flew into Port Moresby and set up camp at the official PM's residence at Miragini House. PDM had set up camp at Sir Mekere's shell-shaped residence at Tuaguba Hill, overlooking Ella Beach. Now the story becomes more interesting from here, as it takes an interesting twist and my personal involvement. It is now Monday 13th July, and Parliament is sitting next day, the 14th, to elect a new Prime Minister upon the vacancy created by the resignation of Skate. Pundari is clearly the man destined to be the 5th Prime Minister, as the numbers are solidly stacked in his favour at Miragini House, so it seemed. I was summoned to Sir Mek's residence by Wingti early in the morning. I had since withdrawn from the exercise after APP and PPP abandoned the PDM ship, and I felt dejected and betrayed. Arriving at the residence, I saw Wingti, Sir Mek, Alois Koki, Vincent Awali, late, and Sir Michael Ogio, late, in deep discussion. Sir Mek and Wingti stepped out towards the dining table and invited me to sit down. Wingti then proceeded to tell me something quite unbelievable. He said negotiations with Haivata and Pangupati had resulted in agreement being reached that Haivata would be our nominee for PM. Pangupati and 5 other independent MPs would take us over the line. Jamie Maxstone Graham, late, and I would accompany Awali to the secret discussions at Haiveta's house to plan Pangu's escape from Miragini House. On arriving at Haiveta's residence, we went into the living room where Haiveta, Sir Peter Luce, Gabriel Ramoy, and Daniel Kapi were waiting. Haiveta insisted that a communique be signed by all the leaders committing the PM position to him. He and Sir Peter would return to Miragini, and once the communique was delivered, he would advise Skate, and Pangu members would leave Miragini. We went back and advised Sir Mekere and Wingti that a communique was prepared by Rimbink Pato, and at 12 p.m., all the party leaders assembled at Pato's office at Tuaguba Hill to sign the agreement. Sir Mekere, Sir Michael, Ted Diro, John Momis, Wingti, and Sir Julius were present to commit to nominate and vote for Haiveta as Prime Minister. Maxton Graham and I were dispatched to deliver the document to Elizabeth Haiveta, who delivered it to her husband. At around 4 p.m., Elizabeth fronted up at the Miragini House main gate and demanded to see her husband. After some arguments with the security guards, she realized that the gate was welded and no one could drive in and out. Haiveta had a private meeting with Skate and briefed him about the offer he had received from the other camp in a signed communique. They were allowed by Skate to leave, but the Pangupati members could not get past the welded gate. Meanwhile, a decision was made by the leaders at Sir Mekere's house to relocate their camp to Haiveta's residence. Sir Michael, Momis, Sir John Kaputin, Diro, Koki, Ogio, Sir Mek, and 40 other MPs cramped into Haiveta's residence and settled in for the long night. They hoped against hope that Haiveta and his Pangu members would get out of Miragini and join the camp, giving full assurance that the Prime Minister would be elected from their camp. Meanwhile, at Miragini House, Skate had called a meeting and advised everyone of the changed circumstances. Haiveta and Pangupati's acceptance of the Prime Ministership offer from the other camp had made it difficult to support Pundari as nominee for Prime Minister. The late Paul Pora had recounted to me his impressions of the meeting. He had been watching Pundari's impressions as Skate spoke about Pangupati's decision to defect. He said Pundari's face turned red and expressionless. He could tell that Pundari was up to something. Pundari summoned all APP members and other members from PPP and National Party to his room. He told the MPs that Haiveta and Skate had lied to him in Madang just to lure him into Mirigini House, only to betray and dump him like this. He told the group that if he was not going to be Prime Minister from Mirigini House, then neither would Haiveta. A plan was hatched, and Pundari's numbers Manfred Konga was instructed to call me at Haiveta's residence. Konga rang Edie Mike, who was at the gate on a mobile phone, and asked to speak to me. I hesitated to speak to Konga due to disagreements over the split in Madang. However, Edie insisted that Konga had something very important to convey from Pundari. After being fully briefed by Konga, and being convinced that Pundari was serious that their plan was going to work, I agreed to his proposal. I looked at the time. It was 3 a.m. on Tuesday. The ringing of the bells in the Parliament chamber for the commencement of the sitting was only 6 hours away. I looked around for Sir Mekere and found him fast asleep on the balcony with Sir John Caputin. I woke him up and told him that at daybreak he would be elected Prime Minister. I told him the plan and advised him not to tell anyone until they are in the opposition conference room at 9 a.m. I told him to go back to sleep and just follow events as they unfolded in Parliament. I summoned Edie Mike, Gabriel Dusava, Timothy Bonga, and Joseph Sakwinom to meet me at 7 a.m. at the Deputy Opposition Leader's office. I explained to the guys that Pundari and his APP plan, which was bound to happen at 8:45 a.m. The plan was that as the convoy of buses taking the MPs from Mirigini House made their way into Parliament, the second bus taking all the APP and Pundari supporters would veer left into the members' entrance and make their way to the opposition conference room on the first floor B wing. The leading bus with Skate and Haiveta would continue to proceed to the A wing. Opposition staff and party officials would cordon off the MP's entrance and secure the MP's escape into the opposition area. At 8:45 a.m., 3 25-seater buses entered the main MP's entrance, facing the golf course, and made their way towards the B wing. I was standing with Gabriel Dusava and Bonga at the Deputy Opposition Leader's office and anxiously watched the convoy of buses and cars make their way into the MP's car park. Then the second bus turned left into the driveway to the MP's entrance. There was laughter, high fives, and handshakes as we knew the long, long night of waiting with much uncertainty was over and our camp was going to be in government. Meanwhile, pandemonium broke out downstairs as Pundari and his supporters exited the bus, through the door and the windows amidst the clapping and shouting of the opposition MPs and supporters. After all the MPs were ushered into the conference room, a head count was done with 62 MPs present. Sir Mekere was proposed by Pundari to be the Prime Minister nominee. Sir Mekere confirmed Pundari to be DPM, and the ratio of ministerial allocations was agreed to by all the political party leaders. At 10 a.m. the bells started ringing as the MPs made their way into the chamber. Both Skate and Haiveta had not been aware of Pundari's escape. As they walked together into the chamber, the first thing they realized was that seats on the government side of the house were empty, and much to their shock and disbelief, they saw Pundari seated next to Sir Mekere on the front row of the opposition benches. When the bells stopped ringing, the mace was carried into the chamber and all MPs stood up. The Speaker entered and took the chair. After the reciting of the Lord's Prayer, the Speaker proceeded next to announce the vacancy in the position of Prime Minister due to the resignation of Skate. He called for nominations. John Pundari stood up and nominated the Honourable Sir Mekere Morauta, MP for Port Moresby North West, as nominee for Prime Minister. Another MP seconded the nomination. Someone moved another motion to nominate Honourable Francis Coiman-Rea, MP for East New Britain Provincial, as a nominee. Another MP seconded the nomination. Another moved for the close of nominations and seconded. When the votes were taken and counted, Sir Mekere had secured the votes of 91 members of parliament, the highest ever in the election of any prime minister since independence. Koiman Rea secured only 5 votes. I was waiting at the opposition lobby with a huge crowd of well-wishers and supporters when the members of the new government filed out of the opposition benches to await swearing in of the newly elected prime minister at Government House. Sir Mekere saw me and came over, and after our congratulatory handshake, asked me to accompany him and Lady Rosalind Marauta in the official PM's Mercedes-Benz, prepared for the drive to the Government House. Whilst on the drive to Konedobu, he gave his first ever direction as Prime Minister to me. He directed that I prepare my letter of appointment as his Chief of Staff on the Prime Minister's letterhead. I must report to his residence at 8 a.m. the next day for his signature, and then proceed to Parliament and Marauta House to prepare for his assumption into the Prime Minister's office the next day. It took me over 24 hours to do this video for educational purposes, so I would appreciate it if you would click the like button and subscribe to my channel.